many years of experience in post-secondary education and workforce development, and they've been important contributors in state efforts to make data on education and training programs outcomes available to prospective students and policymakers. We have Aaron Fichtner, Deputy Commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce Development, Mark Schneider, the President of College Measures, which is an initiative that works with states to calculate and publicize employment outcomes for college graduates, and Bryan Wilson, Deputy Director of the Washington Workforce Training and Education Coordinating Board. How this is going to work, each of our panelists will give a brief summary of the scorecard activities going on in the states they work with. Then we'll have about a 20-minute panel discussion followed by questions from the audience. Mark, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so why don't we get to the first page. So this is Mark Schneider. I'm the President of College Measures, which is a joint effort between the American Institutes for Research, where I'm also a Vice President, and a technology company based in the UK called Matrix Knowledge Group. We've been supported by the Lumina Foundation and actually by the Gates Foundation to work with states in order to link their student unit record data with the wage data that we're gathering from the state's unemployment insurance wage data. The data, the project is, we have two waves of the project. The first wave was 5 states, just in order in which they were released, with Tennessee, Arkansas, Virginia, Colorado, and Texas. We are back in the field working with Texas, Colorado, and Tennessee, and we added Florida and Minnesota, and I'll explain briefly what the second wave is about. But we know that for many years states have been linking their student unit records and their unemployment insurance wage data, but very few states have actually tried to put them into the public domain in a way that was easy to use and that was accessible to a wide audience. And basically, with the support of the Lumina Foundation, we went out and asked the 20 states or so that the data quality campaign said had been linking these data, and asked them if they'd be willing to work with us to put the data into the public domain. And the unit of analysis for us is the program level. So we are collecting the data that the states are giving us the rolled up data at the program level, so we never touch individual student level data. And from the program level, we also roll it up to the institution level or to the program level at the state. So we know, for example, what the average wages are of psychology graduates, but we also know what the average wages are of psychology graduates in all 4-year institutions in a given state. We know what business administration majors make, et cetera. So we could, I'll show you a few examples of the kinds of findings that we're putting out in the public domain and the kinds of, and you can see why these have elicited some of the responses. Next, Rachel. So here, what we do here is we show the starting wages, and these are first-year wages starting 6 months after graduation and rolled up for 1 year. And basically, what we're looking at is the associate's versus the bachelor's degree, but we're also looking in the states that divide their associate's degrees into the traditional AAS transfer degrees, the AAS, the applied science degree, and Colorado even has another one called the General Studies, the Associates of General Studies. So if you just take a look at the longest bar, Rachel, could you just, so you can see in Colorado, the AAS is the average salary for starting salary for students with the AAS degree is far higher than the AAS degree, but it's also higher than the bachelor's degree. In Texas, the same thing, way higher than the academic associate's degree and higher than the bachelor's degree. In Virginia, the difference is somewhat smaller, but again, the technical associate's degree over and over and over again is the degree in the 1 year after graduation that pays off. If we look at Tennessee, which does not divide its associate's degrees into technical versus transfer, in Tennessee, all of the associate degrees put together the wages are higher than the bachelor's degree. So it's only in Arkansas, the 5 states that we've done, where the technical degree it doesn't exceed the bachelor's degree. And the next is, these are graduates from 2-year community colleges in Virginia. The dark blue are the associate's degree, which is oriented towards bachelor credit, and the light blue are the occupational technical degrees, associate degrees, and you can see on the right the size of the difference between the salaries of students coming out with occupational technical degrees versus bachelor's degrees. I mean, it's as much as $14,000. And the nice thing about that is that these are the same schools, so there's the variation in regional labor markets is controlled for, and you could just see the value of the technical two-year degree. For the bachelor's degree, there are a couple of other findings that I'll highlight. And so this is Virginia. There's 42 schools, both not-for-profit and public in the data set, and we've arranged them by the median wages of the average first-year wages of bachelor degree graduates. And you can see at the very bottom, encircled in red, Rachel, these schools are all not-for-profit schools with cost of attendance that are in the vicinity of $40,000, net price in the vicinity of about $40,000, and their graduates that are going into the labor market are making less than $30,000. So this is just fair warning to students. The other finding that we find in every single state, and I'll show you next another state, what we find is that there are many graduates from many states, institutions, where the salaries are about the same. So usually within 10% of the state median, we find a third of the schools, or a significant number of schools where students are earning about the same amount of money upon graduation. So the message there for us is that there are many paths into the labor market, and it's not just you don't have to go to UVA. You can go to a lot of different schools and end up roughly at the same starting point as the flagships or many other schools. So there are many routes into the labor market. Next. And here, this is just an example from Colorado that shows the exact same thing. These are in red and circled. We find again about half of the schools in the state end up with graduates earning about the same amount of money. And you can imagine UC Boulder was not happy with this finding because its graduates, many of its graduates leave the state, but the graduates that are working in state are not at the top of the heap. The Colorado School of Mines, by the way, is one of the great buys in the United States. Next. So what we do here is I show the programs with the lowest earnings in the 5 states. You can see many of them are liberal, 3 of them are liberal arts. Music performance in every state is a very low paying position. Photography, philosophy, and then if you look on the right-hand side, these are the highest first-year earnings, and in every single state, it's an engineer. Rachel, there was a push. Yeah, so 3 liberal arts, all in engineering. Next, maybe that's it. Oh no. Okay, and then what we do here is we show what not everybody could be an engineer, right? So what we're doing here is we're taking the most popular programs and we're charting the wages, the first-year wages of graduates from the most popular programs. And just, Rachel, just push so psychology is the largest program in just about every state, and we could see that in every one of these states, the starting wages of graduates with psychology is lower than the median, the statewide averages. We could see, so business administration is usually one of the other very popular programs, usually higher than the state median. And of course, if you do degrees in registered nursing, you end up with the highest, or health-related professions. Those are the highest paying ones. Just one other point, in Texas, we show biology, and that's in Virginia. And in fact, you can see that the wages for biologists are lower than the state median. And I've written a lot about STEM and what we really, for me, it's really TEM, technology, engineering, and math. We do not have a lot of evidence that bio graduates are being rewarded. Next, and maybe that's it. I think, and that's it for me.
That is it. Thank you. Bryan, why don't we turn it over to you and can talk a little bit about Washington State.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Washington State has been operating our state's consumer scorecard system that we call Careerbridge for about 10 years now for the purpose of helping make for informed consumers of post-secondary education and training. Looking at this slide, you can see the number and type of programs that we have performance information for on our Careerbridge website. When I'm using the term program here, I am referring to local programs such as the Registered Nurse Program at Bellevue College or the Automotive Technician Program at Shoreline. So you can see here that we have just about 1,600 local programs with posted performance information on our Careerbridge site. The largest number of these are community or technical college programs, but we also have programs from private vocational schools, also known as proprietary schools, and from four-year colleges and universities. Next slide, please. And this is the type of information as far as performance that we offer on our Careerbridge website. For each of the programs, we had the number of graduates, the completion rate, the number with reported employment, the employment rate, median hourly earnings and annual earnings, and the industry of employment. The labor market measures of employment earnings are taken by looking at the third quarter after students have graduated. This is based upon all students. We do have, as you can see here, the industry of employment. A lot of folks would like to know whether or not people get a job in the field for which they were trained or educated. As a lot of folks know, that data is not available through administrative records, at least not through the wage records. We do know, however, the industry of their employer. So this gives some idea of whether the employment they receive may be related to their training. Next slide. On our website, besides performance information for the programs, we have other information that students or potential students are likely interested in, such as how much the program costs, how long it is, what type of award, certificate, associate, bachelor's degree, so forth, whether or not the program is eligible for the eligible training provider list that indicates which programs may be receiving funding through the Workforce Investment Act. We indicate whether the program is eligible for students receiving veteran benefits for post-secondary education training. And we provide information on student demographics. A lot of folks who are thinking of going to college, particularly older folks maybe who are thinking of going back, are curious to know, are there going to be students in that program who are like me? It has racial, ethnic, gender information, as well as age. So folks can see, get an idea of what their classmates are going to be like. On the website, we also have links to career guidance and labor market information, so an individual can look up not only then was the result, how much does someone who graduates with a degree or certificate from this program make, but in general, how much do people who are in that occupation make in the state? And there's a variety of career guidance tools, aptitude tests, and so forth that links to. We also have links to financial aid information, so individuals can look up what financial aid they may be able to receive. Next slide. So where does this data come from? For the private vocational schools and the four-year colleges and universities, my agency, the State Workforce Board, collects the administrative records on the students from the individual schools and the individual programs at the four-year colleges and universities. We then arrange for these student records to be linked with the wage records from our own state's Employment Security Department. We also arrange for the records to be linked with the WRIS system, the Wage Record Interchange System, that has wage records for, I believe it's now 49 of the states in the District of Columbia, and the Federal Employment Data Exchange System, FEDIS, which has employment wage information for federal employees. All our programs for which we have posted performance information and for which we use the RIS and FETA system are part of the eligible training provider list for WIA, which makes it eligible to connect with these sources of data for out-of-state employment earnings. For our community and technical colleges, it's similar, except for we do have a centralized student information system for our 34 community and technical colleges. So instead of having to go to each individual college, we can simply go to that system to get the student records. Next slide. So who uses this system? A lot of people do. We have, the most recent year, 193,000 unique website users. And as in many cases, we have a pop-up survey that a lot of people do fill out. And based upon that, you can see that most of the plurality indicates that they are students, and fairly closely followed by individuals who indicate they're unemployed workers. And those are our two main populations of users. So with that, I think that provides a quick summary, and we'll probably go back and see if we can connect with Aaron.
Thanks very much, Bryan. Great, Aaron, you want to chime in and tell us a bit about New Jersey's system?
Sure, thanks. We have a lot of similarities with Washington State, and so I'm going to point out, I think, some of the main critical differences, because I think we've taken our own New Jersey approach to some of the issues. We started, the challenge that we faced in New Jersey was like many challenges. We were investing significant amounts of money in our workforce programs and in training and education programs, and didn't have any information on the outcomes. So we've been at this for 10 plus years in New Jersey. We have a state law that requires that any training provider that is going to receive state or federal workforce funds must be on the state's eligible training provider list. That doesn't just apply to the Workforce Investment Act, but it applies to all 56 workforce programs that we administer here at the Department of Labor. That gives us a tremendous amount of incentives for training providers to be part of this system. So any provider that wants to be on the eligible training provider list has to agree to submit their student records for all of their students, not just for those that are publicly funded, to us on a regular basis. We developed the NJ Training Opportunities website, njtops.org, that serves three purposes. It's the searchable directory of post-secondary training and education programs. It's also our online application system for training providers. So training providers have an online system to both to apply to be on the eligible training provider list and also to provide detailed information and for us to manage their application process. And it also allows them to upload their student records, and I'll talk about that in a moment. We also have a second law related to private career schools, for-profit and non-profit post-secondary training providers, sub-college, sub-2-year, 4-year college. We are the department in partnership with our Department of Education that regulates those 300-plus private career schools, and that law we're in the process of fully implementing aligns very nicely with our eligible training provider list and will require all of those career schools to report student records to us at the state and then to be included on the njtops.org website. So next slide. We take data currently from 5 different sources. We get data directly from training providers. They upload their student directors to the secure portion of njtops.org. We also get student records on public colleges and universities from our Office of the Secretary of Higher Education. We get data from the Education Department about adult vocational high schools. We get data from our own department for adult basic education programs, and we also get data from our own department through our America's One-Stop Operating System, which is our case management data system for all of our workforce programs. So we have a partnership with Rutgers University. They do all of the data matching for us. They get data from all 5 sources. They match it and clean it, match it against the New Jersey unemployment insurance wage records, against the wage record interchange system, because this is a Workforce Investment Act related activity. And all that data is combined. Calculations are made for 3 labor market outcomes, and the data is then presented on the njtops.org website for those programs that are on the eligible training provider list. So it's an obvious point that many public college and university programs won't be on the ETPL. So while we're calculating data on the outcomes for our four-year institutions, for our PhD programs at our four-year institutions, for example, they're probably not going to be on the ETPL, and so they're not going to be displayed. We do get the data summary tables on all of our outcomes, and we use them for program and policy decisions. So the outcomes that are displayed on njtops.org are really four measures: employment rate, retention rate, in employment, average quarterly wage. We also estimate the yearly wage. And we calculate them for 6 months after completion, 1 year after completion, and 2 years after completion. And we report that data at the program level, the career cluster level, and the provider level. The reason we have it at the career cluster level is that we don't display any data for programs that have less than 10 graduates. And we were finding that in some of our programs we had small amounts of data, and we didn't want to deal with the confidentiality issue. So there are some cases where we don't release program level but have career cluster group similar programs together and have outcomes at that level. So just want to show you very quickly a couple of slides from NJTops. This is the initial screen that you get if you go to njtops.org with a lot of dense background information, but most importantly, you probably click on the button Get Started and Search for Training. So the next slide is the search screen. It allows you to search by occupation, by type of program, by zip code, by the provider name. Also allows you to filter by targeted industries. We've selected 7 key industry clusters in New Jersey that we're focused on from a workforce and economic development standpoint. You also can look for green job training programs, or limit your search to only those occupations that are in demand as per the analysis of our Office of Research and Information. So once you did the search, and this is a sample search result page that you get, this is outcomes. This is the information for a health profession radiography AAS degree program at Bergen Community College. You get a couple of tabs. You get a program description, a provider description, and some results. The information displayed here in the last screen and on the other screens, information provided by the providers themselves. They can make changes and we would approve them. The screen you're seeing now is our employment outcomes screen, program results tab, where you can get the results both at the, like I said, 6 months, 1 year after training, and 2 year after training. You can see there's a tab that allows you to toggle between the different levels of outcomes and outcomes displayed in a table format for programs, career cluster, and the training provider. So we have spent a lot of time, considerable time, kind of getting to where we are now. Very excited about the opportunity of implementing our private career school legislation that would bring probably 150 more training providers into the system, and also are working very closely with our higher education and education departments through our Workforce Data Quality Initiative to add more and more data to the system as we go forward. So we'll be happy to answer any questions and participate in the rest of the discussion.
Great. Thank you so much, Aaron. So as you can see, there's a variety of activity going on in different states. Workforce Data Quality Campaign, one of our main agenda items for our policy platform, is to support more transparent, showing more transparent outcomes, both education and employment outcomes, for a wide variety of post-secondary programs, from workforce development programs to more traditional higher education. So this is just an example of some of the things that are going on in the states, and this is obviously a national conversation as well. The Obama administration has recently been talking about college rating systems and promoting their standardized college scorecards. So this is something that is going to continue in the national and state conversations going forward. So I just wanted to draw some questions out about a couple of issues that all of you raised in your presentations. So the metrics were mostly the same kind of metrics, you know, looking at completion, some student characteristics, employment outcomes, earnings. How did your states decide which metrics to use and how to display the information? Aaron, can you talk about New Jersey's experience?
Sure. We worked very closely Department of Labor and our State Employment and Training Commission, which is our state workforce investment board, on the implementation of the system. We convened a advisory group of a variety of stakeholders, both researchers as well as people in multiple departments and training providers, to have a series of discussions about the metrics that should be calculated. Certainly those were informed by the availability of data. We were creating this, we were really putting together new data systems and had lots of discussions about balancing what was available between what was ideal. So really, those discussions with stakeholders were really critical to influence the metrics that we calculated. And that same group was also very helpful in providing input to us on how to display that information and make it available to through the website.
Great. Mark or Bryan, did the states you've been working with go through kind of a similar balancing act between data available and ideal metrics?
Well, the world is structured that way, right? We all have to compromise with the ideal. Actually, our system was a little bit different because as we've gone from one state to the other, the model of the first states have actually been informing a lot of the discussion in subsequent states. So we have worked very, very closely with, for example, the Tennessee Higher Education Commission or the Texas Higher Ed Coordinating Board. We work very closely with the states, so we're not imposing anything on them, but we think of it as like an 80-20% solution. About 80% of the metrics are metrics that we want all our partner states to report. So it's the annual wages at the end of, from the third to the sixth quarter. And then states have added other information, other indicators that are relevant for their policy discussions, and we're more than happy to do that. But it's like it's like Walmart. 80% of the stock is the same, and 20% varies from state to state depending on what the local needs are. So we're trying to get a lot of shared indicators, but customized the 20% customization.
In Washington State, the state statutes gave the Workforce Board the authority to set common standards for measuring program performance and directed us to use wage records as one of the tools for doing that. So that statutory basis helped us get started with a very long and deliberative process where we included representatives of each of the affected programs. We had both the training providers and the programs that purchase training. And we had the research managers from each of those programs. And we had state representatives and local representatives who went through elaborate discussions, looked at a lot of data to come to agreements to what are the best performance metrics if all the programs that could be measured by the same metrics. Particularly the follow-up period to use was very key, and picking a period that would give a fair and representative indication of the relative performance of programs. Once we had agreement on the measures, we first measured programs on a statewide basis, so community and technical colleges as a whole across the state, what were their results, apprenticeship across the state, what were the results for apprenticeship, and so forth. And we did that for a couple of years before we then went down to the local level. After people were comfortable with the measures, with how results looked, then we developed our consumer scorecard system for program results at the local level.
Great. Thanks for that additional background. So what magnitude of resources is required to develop these systems? I'm sure it varies across states, but do you have kind of a sense of order of magnitude? Mark, maybe you can talk about the experience in your state.
Yeah, so I think the question is how much work have the states already done in terms of matching the data? So what we discovered was that many states have matched the data and have been sitting around for years without putting it into the public domain. And we came along and we said, we will build a web interface to sit on your data. And it actually, in every state that we worked in, they had the data. It took some time for them to put it into spreadsheets that fit our specifications, and then we just built a website on top of their data. And it's a fully searchable website. You can search by program, you can search by school, you can search by program by school, and the work in all the 7 states that we are working with, that they had already done the data work, the matching work, and it was remarkably fast to turn it into a website that is fully searchable. I just want to comment on something about the time frame issue. You know, how far out should you go? Our data, similar to the other 2 examples, is actually, ours is annual, starting in the 3rd quarter, which I believe New Jersey does also. And we use a 3rd to the 6th quarter, and that was round 1. But we are now working with all our states in the 2nd round, and we, depending on which state it is, we're going to have 1, 3, 5, 8, and as many as 10 years out to show trends and what is a longer-term outcome. It turns out that there's a fair degree of stability, that most programs that produce graduates with low incomes 1 year out are low income 5 years out and 10 years out. There are a couple of places where it changes, but it's a remarkably, so far, the data we've looked at has been a remarkably stable ranking, relative positioning of graduates over time.
In Washington State, our costs vary between about $225,000 a year to about $350,000 a year. The variance is due to where we are at in terms of website maintenance and revamping. When we make major changes to the website, we get closer to the $350,000 amount. We only have 1.7 FTEs devoted to the Careerbridge website. The funding sources we draw on, we have used 3 funding sources in combination. We use WIA funds, the 15% money that's available for statewide activities and state administration. We use Perkins leadership dollars, and we also use state general fund dollars. The allocation between those 3, depending on the availability of those 3 funding sources in a particular year.
So in New Jersey, we made a significant investment in the first couple of years in building the website, because it does allow for the application process as well as the secure uploading of data. So we were making probably in the early years investments around $300,000 and $350,000 a year for the first couple of years, but our costs have come down considerably since then, and so we're spending less than $100,000 a year to maintain the system, and we have about I guess probably 1 FTE of staff that are working to maintain it. As we go forward and really integrate our private career school approval process with our eligible training provider list, it will require some additional investments, and we're still working out kind of the implications of that, but it gives us a good opportunity to really take a fresh look at how we have implemented our ETPL process. Because, as I said earlier, our system applies to all of our state and federal workforce programs, we're able to really draw on a wide variety of funding streams. Our state training programs, we have a state trust fund for training programs that we use to partially invest in the system. We use Workforce Investment Act dollars certainly, as well as other dollars from other training programs that we implement here at the department.
And Mark, you started to talk about some plans for moving to the next step, looking at longer-term outcomes. I'm curious about the limits of the data that are on all 3 of these site models, and what are some of the challenges to overcoming those limits, and what are your next steps? Bryan, what about Washington State?
Well, one of the limits certainly is the problem of having many programs for which the number of graduates per year is very small, so that trying to influence people's decisions about enrollment based upon the employment outcomes for just a handful of students is not a very meaningful way of going about that. In Washington State, our performance numbers are based upon a 3-year roll-up of graduates, and there have to be at least 25 graduates over the course of those 3 years. Even with that pretty liberal way of trying to get more programs in, as I said earlier, we have about 1,600 programs for which we post performance information. We have almost as many, 1,500, for which we have performance information, but we do not post it because we do not have 25 graduates over the last 3 years. In some cases, these are very new programs, but they're generally very small programs. There are a lot of small programs out there that we haven't felt comfortable that we have a way of providing meaningful performance information for.
So I think small N size is an issue in a lot of this work. So there's a difference between the two state programs, which are much more workforce oriented as compared to the work that I'm doing, which is more post-secondary oriented. So what we're doing is all programs, mostly in public institutions, but in Arkansas and Virginia was public and not-for-profit. And we also roll up several years of data to increase the size of, so we hit the N size that we can report. We use an N size of 10 before we report. But rolling up is one issue, the small N size. And again, I think our problem is somewhat different than the two states, which are specifically workforce oriented. Because what we do is we often roll up from the 6-digit zip code, the classification and structural program, to a 4 or 2 level, and that often gives us enough reporting power. But there's still the problem that you're losing the program information. You're just going up to a higher level of aggregation in the zip code. I think the other problem that we are addressing is the question of out-of-state. What happens to the students who graduate and then move out of state. And both of New Jersey and Washington are using risk data. What we're trying to use is risk-2 data, which is different in the sense that institutions of higher education can now ask for the data, the wage data from the 29, I think, states that are now participating in risk-2. And we are going to be able in the next round to report on the wages of graduates that are working in state and as compared to the wages of graduates that we find in the 30 states or 29 states, I think, that are in the risk-2 system.
Okay, and the reason you're looking to risk-2 is because the original RISC, the wage record interchange system, the data sharing agreement is limited to specific purposes, looking at Department of Labor funded WIA programs, and that includes eligible training providers, but that doesn't cover all of the programs you look at. Is that right?
Correct, and we're covering all programs, both technical and academic, certificates. So yes, so we needed a broader database than simply is not the right word, than what was covered by RISC, the first round of RISC. Great. And do want to leave plenty of time for audience questions, but one more that I'll throw out there. Bryan, you talked a little bit about some information you have about who's using the system. I'm curious about other states, what information they've been able to gather about educators, career counselors, prospective students, how these different audiences are using the data, to what extent they're using the data, and finding it helpful. Aaron, you want to talk about New Jersey?
Sure. So in New Jersey, our system is very widely used by our career counselors and our one-stop career centers. It's a requirement for anybody who's getting an individual training grant or an individual training account, depending whether it's state or federally funded, that they, as a consumer, use our system with their career counselor. So we have great use in the one-stops, and very good feedback from our career counselors and the individuals that they work with. We have not done nearly enough, and we were planning to do more, to really market the system beyond our one-stop system, particularly as we go towards a broader system that becomes our scorecard for our private career schools, And as we work with our higher education office to really broaden this to higher education, I think there's a great opportunity for a more aggressive marketing effort to really get a wider variety of users and to get, obviously, as we do that, to get feedback and do focus groups to make sure that we're creating a product that is useful to a broader audience.
Great. I'm going to turn it over now to Jen Gable, our Communications Associate, who's going to walk through the process for the audience Q&A.
Thanks, Rachel. We're going to try to get in as many questions as possible in the time that we have left. So it looks like Amanda Bergson-Shilcock was the first one to chime in. Amanda, your line is open.
Great, thank you. This is Amanda Bergson-Shilcock from the Welcoming Center for New Pennsylvanians. First of all, thank you, because as a program evaluator, it's really exciting to me to see this kind of data being collected and being shared. And I guess my question just follows on to the answer we were just hearing about New Jersey. But my question is how you're raising awareness among guidance counselors, one-stop center workers, and other people about the tremendous resources that you have created. It just seems to me that they're such important gatekeepers, and I wonder how you're helping to educate people so that they know that your websites and your resources are out there.
So this is Mark Schneider. We are working with support from the Gates Foundation. Next week in Texas, we've worked with the National College Advising Corps and NCAN to take essentially the same data we have, repackage it so it's much more directed towards career choices and program choices. And we've worked very closely with those two sets of guidance counselors to build a desktop and web-based choice mechanism, screening mechanism. So we believe, like you do, that these guidance counselors are key intermediaries, and we've built a new system to interface these data in very close collaboration with the guidance counselors, and it'll be rolling out next week.
Great, thank you.
In Washington State, we have a publication that is used widely in the secondary schools here. It's a hard copy publication for on career guidance information about post-secondary education and training programs. And it's only distributed upon request, but we would get requests for about 200,000 copies that go out to secondary schools a year. On that publication is a link to our Careerbridge website, so that the students who are looking at this hard copy publication then will learn about the website. And that's probably the primary way in which students throughout the state and our secondary schools are learning about this information.
So in New Jersey, our NJ TOPS website is a critical part of our jobsforjersey.com website, which has all of our tools, our reemployment tools, and tools for businesses from the workforce side. We've done a pretty intensive marketing campaign for Jobs for Jersey and have a large number of users in a variety of places. So that's a kind of a major way that people might find out about NJ TOPS. Like Washington, we also have a number of career awareness products. We're currently working to develop career pathways, brochures, and posters for our key 7 industry clusters, and those will be distributed to high schools, community colleges, career counselors, at a variety of institutions, libraries, and that will be another way to publicize the NJ TOPS website. It will be prominently displayed on those career information materials.
Great, thank you so much.
Great, thanks, Amanda. It looks like Matt Barowitz was next. Matt, are you there? Do you have a question?
I do. Thank you. This is Matt Barowitz from the Vermont Department of Labor. I appreciate everyone going over the information. It's been extremely helpful. I have 2 quick questions related to process. One, similar to how they do retail same-store sales, as you look to adding a temporal relationship over time, are you actually going to be just comparing individuals and dropping out observations you don't have? That's part A. And then B, and this might answer actually the first part, is this wage data inclusive of people earning 0 or unreported that you can't locate, or is this just for those wages above 0, these are the responses? Thank you.
So in 4 of the 5 states that we work with, we only included people who are making the minimum wage in any given quarter. So I mean, so there's a problem which you know, and that is that many records in the UI data have either zeros or ones or tens or something like that. You know, so they're very low numbers or zero. So the decision was made to only include people who made the minimum wage in any given quarter. Texas did not do that. Texas included, and again, you know, this is all driven by state policy. Texas included everybody in the UI database, regardless of what the number was.
In Washington State, we count any employment that has a wage, no matter how small, and our calculation of wages is, excludes the zeros and then was the median wage among those with wages.
And we take a similar approach to Washington State here in New Jersey.
Great. All right. Thank you, Matt. Looks like the next person we have here is Ariane Hegewisch. Ariane, if you're there, your line is open.
Thank you. This is Ariane Hegewisch from the Institute for Women's Policy Research. I wanted to know 2 things. Firstly, Mark, whether those data are available by gender and or by race, ethnic background, and secondly, whether anybody has started to look at whether the availability of the data is influencing people's choice of where and what they study.
So the answer is my data are not available or reported by race, ethnicity, or gender. The work that we're doing now in the state of Texas, where we are working with guidance counselors to actively try to get students to pay attention to these data, we are just going down that road of actually measuring the impact of this kind of data on choices.
Deputy Commissioner's Office.
In Washington State, we have a publication called Workforce Training Results, which shows the aggregate performance of the statewide programs. That publication breaks down information on the results by gender. On the other question, we have not looked at, tried to look at what influence this information's had on enrollment choices.
So in New Jersey, we don't report data by gender or race either, but interestingly enough, we had early discussions with our advisory group about whether we should make data available by demographic groups. And there was a lot of interest in doing that on our website, but we don't have the data really to support you know, the N size issue for subgroups. So we have the data, but don't make it available. And we have not done certainly enough to really understand how our website influences decision making, though we certainly get anecdotal information from our career counselors that at least at their one-stop level that people are using the information and making better, at least, you know, anecdotally making decisions using that information.
Okay, great. It looks like we have time for one more question. I'm going to open it up for Scott Davis. Scott, if you're there, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. This is Scott Davis. I'm with Impact International. I had one question. So one thing that seems to be very important in terms of being able to develop these types of reporting systems is a good connection between the state education agency and the state workforce agency. And I know from speaking with some states that sometimes there can be obstacles to that connection, particularly kind of interpretations of FERPA and things like that. I was curious if the panelists might be able to comment on whether there were any sorts of obstacles of that nature that they dealt with and kind of how that was overcome. Thank you.
So in New Jersey, I'll start commenting on that. You know, it was really critical for us that we had a partnership with Rutgers University, our state university partner. So we were able to get around some of the FERPA issues. So we don't see any of the student record data from education. Rutgers University has a separate contract and data sharing agreement with our education agency, so they're able to get education data and put it into the system without us having to deal with the FERPA issue, in the sense that the data isn't shared outside of an agent of the education department. But it certainly does take a lot of time and effort to continue to build relationships with the education department, and we continue to do that through our Workforce Data Quality Initiative, WDQI, as well as some other related efforts.
In Washington, we have a number of structural features which are in some cases unique that facilitated this. We're the State Workforce Investment Board for Washington. We're also the State Perkins Agency for Washington. We're also the state agency that regulates the proprietary schools and say what they need to do to get a license. So that's very helpful. We have a very small board. We only have 3 government members. We have the Chief State School Officer. We have the Director of the Community and Technical Colleges, and we have the Commissioner of the Employment Security Department. So any decision we make at the staff level generally has to be supported by the education training providers, as well as what is in effect our Department of Labor. Earlier, many years ago, our Department of Labor did try to develop a consumer report system, and that effort didn't really go over very well. Having it come just from the Department of Labor didn't seem to work as well as coming from an agency that was, in effect, is a coordinating board with all the key stakeholders on the board and staff having to make sure that all key stakeholders are pleased.
So I have experience in 7 states now, and there are 2 critical pieces. The first one, which both New Jersey and Washington noted, and that is state legislation is awfully helpful. And if you have state legislation requiring this, you go in a long way to getting this done. The other thing that we discovered is that you actually need a champion that is going to help overcome a lot of the obstacles. But in 7 states now, the relationship between, and I go in through education, not through workforce. But the relationship between education and workforce, everybody understands that as a natural link and an important link. Again, education, higher education, is the largest human capital investment that states make. So governors care about this. And so what I need to find in every state is somebody like Randy Boyd in Tennessee, or the commissioner of the Texas Higher Ed Coordinating Board, who understands this and pushes it and makes the connection and nourishes that connection between education and workforce. But some states, there's a self-selection process. I don't go into states that can't do this. But when the states decide that they want to do this, it's been remarkably fast and remarkably easy. And actually, some of the numbers, the cost numbers, we build a website, write reports, and we're charging like $75,000 for the setup, and less for a licensing fee on an annual basis. It's not that expensive.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. We're getting to the end of our time. So this is Rachel Zinn again, Director of the WDQC. I want to thank our presenters very, very much for joining us today, and thank you so much to our audience for calling in and listening. I wanted to provide a little bit more information about WDQC, the Workforce Data Quality Campaign, as many of you are probably new to our organization. We're an advocacy group that's a project of the National Skills Coalition, and we advocate for more aligned, inclusive, and market-relevant data systems that can help us answer questions about how well our human capital development policies are working to provide skilled workers for this changing economy that we're all dealing with. We work on both state and federal workforce and education data issues, like the ones that we discussed today. We have an policy agenda that was developed by a broad coalition of partners across the education and workforce spectrum, the National Skills Coalition, the Association for Career and Technical Education, the Center for Law and Social Policy, the Data Quality Campaign, Institute for Higher Education Policy, National Association of State Directors of Career and Technical Education, National Association of State Workforce Agencies, New America Foundation, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We're funded by support from Apollo Group, Joyce Foundation, and the Lumina Foundation. We are really excited about this webinar being our first because this is such a hot topic for so many states. We want to be able to provide technical expertise and allow a platform for state and national experts to share their experiences dealing with challenges to make data more accessible and more available to a variety of stakeholders. So we hope to be doing more webinars like this in the future. Everyone will receive a copy of the PowerPoint presentation and access to a recording of today's webinar. We'll be sending out a follow-up email to all of the registrants next week. You also should look out for our website, workforcedqc.org, which is going to be launching in the next week or so. We're pretty excited about that. The webinar will appear on there, as well as a lot of other information. So again, please feel free to contact me with any questions that we didn't get to today, and I can get in touch with our presenters and try to provide any information that we have as well. My contact information is showing on the screen now. My email is rachelz@workforcedqc.org. So please feel free to contact me and watch for notices of future WDQC webinars and events.